You want to talk a little woke, anti-woke today? Should we get ourselves in trouble? Should we try to get ourselves canceled? Tom, if anyone can do it, it's you.
You're really going to go
last
woke,
day on air.
anti-woke? I want to just go on record as saying the term woke is the dumbest term ever because it's basically a term. It's not a broad general description. I mean, to me, it's meant to be derogatory. So I don't really understand the term kind of woke, but go ahead.
It didn't start out as derogatory, but by the way, hell of a way to start this segment by saying I hate the word woke.
I do hate the word woke.
If that alone
woke is such a stupid term because it's adopted by morons. Morons love to use the term woke because they can describe anything by it. Oh man, that banana you just ate was green. That's a woke banana. Oh, like everything. Oh my God, you took a piss in a urinal with green stuff in it. That's a woke urinal. I mean, the stuff that people come up with, it's like so ridiculous. Oh my God, that coffee was handpicked from blah blah blah. What a woke cup of coffee. Go get yours at Dunkin' Donuts, like a real American.
Tony,
I hate the term woke.
Victor, I blame you, dude.
Keep a smile on your face. This will be the last time, likely, you and I are both on air. Keep a smile on your face. Present a professional image, because this is going to play millions of times on the internet. You ready, Tony?
Give me the woke discussion. I want to hear this.
Sweet Jesus!
I want to hear about your woke
I want everyone to know I immediately regret this decision. Milk was a bad choice. All right, let's get going. According, there was a press release. I shouldn't say according, but there was a press release dropped June 5th. There's been whispers about this. We have a new stock exchange forming in Dallas, Texas.
We have a new option exchange. We have a new futures option exchange forming in Chicago, but called the small exchange. But what do you want to talk about the stock exchange that's in the development stages that doesn't even have a license yet?
All right. Are you going to do that? Are you going to let me set up the premise, my guy? Let me set the pins up. This is how this works.
Set up your premise. Go ahead.
Let me put the pins down, and then you can fire your bowling ball here in a second. Fundraising was underway. They completed around $120 million by about 24 investors, two of which are the most notable and are getting picked up in all of the articles in the press written around this, and for good reason. BlackRock and Citadel are behind the investments behind this exchange in Dallas, Texas. Now, I want to frame this in two different ways. I want to frame this by what I think it's important to do this, by what the official press release has been said by the Texas Stock Exchange, TXSE for short, and what I think the financial media is framing this as. So let's go with the fun part, which is the financial media is framing this as the anti-woke exchange. So the idea...
I guarantee you that that's not coming from Citadel or BlackRock.
100% it's not. 100% it's not. And you know the PR
media, game. What media is framing it that way?
Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, Fortune. I could go on. There are others. Okay. Reuters would be another one. All the major ones.
I'm letting you go on here because NVIDIA just dropped $40.
Okay. So the point is, it's being framed as it's an anti-woke exchange. Why is it being, what about it makes it anti-woke? It's being framed in juxtaposition to the NYSE and the NASDAQ, the duopoly. The NASDAQ a few years ago put in a diversity rule, NASDAQ diversity rule, which requires companies listed on the NASDAQ to publicly disclose board-level diversity statistics annually using a standardized template. And you have to have a certain number of diverse board members depending on the size of your company. And if you do not, you need to effectively write a letter explaining why you do not have the appropriate or the required level of diverse directors. So this is being framed in the public right now as effectively this exchange is not going to have those types of woke requirements, and that it will be CEO friendly. And that's what's effectively in the headlines. That's what's probably picking up a lot of the clicks. I'm going to pause for just a second and ask you, what do you think about BlackRock and Citadel, 24 investors total, pooling together $120 million of capital to start a new stock exchange in Dallas, Texas, the anti-woke exchange?
So taking out the woke the attributes of woke in here. Just talk about Citadel and BlackRock and whoever else starting a new exchange. The fact that it's in Texas doesn't mean crap to me because I couldn't care less. The idea that there's a new stock exchange is actually something that I am very supportive of because, just for the record, I can't stand the New York Stock Exchange and I cannot stand the NASDAQ. Those are two exchanges which I personally don't like either of those exchanges. So having any alternative to those exchanges for Tasty and for Tasty customers is great. Now, this is why I take a lot of kind of objection to the stupid ass headline because the idea of a competitive stock exchange, first of all, the capital they were able to raise and the idea of a competitive stock exchange, not that there aren't other stock exchanges, but the idea of a new competitive stock exchange to me is really interesting and really positive. The real reason these guys are creating the stock exchange has nothing to do with the woke bullshit. But the problem is that financial media is so actually financially illiterate that they don't understand the real reason that people like me and others in the industry really want another stock exchange. And that is because the fee structure that these exchanges put in place and the cost of data from these exchanges is so ridiculous and they rip off our customers that we would love another exchange that would allow us to get data from that exchange on the stocks that we trade, not have to basically put all these additional fees into our cost structure, be able to wipe those fees out, lower the transaction costs for customers, because even though stocks are already free, it gives us an opportunity to lower other costs if we don't have to pay the ridiculous data fees and exchange fees that the New York Stock Exchange charges and the NASDAQ charge. So the reality of this is more competition for lower fees and rates is great. What's surprising to me, and this is why I'd be careful if I was Citadel and BlackRock and everybody else. I mean, don't forget, Citadel is the largest market maker on the New York Stock Exchange. They're also the largest market maker on the NASDAQ. So you're talking about the largest market making firm competing against the largest market making firm. So I think the headlines are incredibly misleading. Not only is the term woke idiotic, and it's to a certain extent, it's embarrassing. But the other part about this is that I'm sure that Citadel and BlackRock did not want it to come out that, hey, this is a Citadel BlackRock exchange, because Citadel needs the New York Stock Exchange and needs the NASDAQ more than it needs another exchange. And so I think what they're trying to do is to complement their investments in Memex, the Memex exchange and other exchanges like that, and capture market share from the New York Stock Exchange. For firms like Tasty and other online brokerage firms, the faster we can right away from the existing old stock exchanges that refuse to negotiate data fees with us. Like, it's ridiculous that if Tony Batista opens an LLC, he's a professional. If Tony Batista opens Tony Batista Corporation, he's a professional, even though it's still Tony Batista. Like, the rules, the crazy rules they have to rip off customers, it's embarrassing and ridiculous, and I want all those rules changed. And in order to get those rules changed, we need new exchanges. That's why we're building the small exchange in Chicago. Now, if you want to call the small exchange woke, please go free. I don't care, because like, it'll give us some publicity. So Tom Sosnoff and Tasty are launching a woke exchange. I don't even know what it means, but because we're trying to give customers a fair deal, so we're being woke. I don't know, but the media has it's completely miscast what this is.
I don't think it's the media. Think about it. You, as a guy who's written N number of press releases, okay?
Yeah.
If somebody comes to you, okay, this is you're an investor in this thing, and they come to you with a press release and it says so-and-so launching new exchange in Dallas, Texas, you'd be like, nobody's gonna read this. This is stupid. Why are you even talking to me? Why are you asking my opinion? You need a quote. I'll give you some dumb quote.
What do you mean nobody's going to look at it? If it's Citadel and Black, you're right. If it's Victor Jones, Tony Batista, and Tom Sosnoff investing in it, nobody's going to give a rat's ass. But if it's Citadel and if the top of the headline says Citadel and BlackRock are opening a new exchange, you don't have to say
that world of that people that care, that grows by saying Citadel and BlackRock, but that world is still small. So if you want more people to care, if we're talking about a new anti-woke stock exchange, Tom, if that is sort of, they didn't put it in their press release.
When you refer to more people,
We're
Are you
talking about it right now because of the
more
framing.
idiots? Like, what are you trying to
Don't
say?
do that.
Are you suggesting for a second that boards shouldn't be diverse? Are you suggesting that companies shouldn't be conscious about the environment or the climate, or what are you trying to suggest here? Or we shouldn't.
You want to go that route? We can.
You don't want any diversity? Too. Are you all of a sudden suggesting you don't want diversity on boards and inside of companies?
First of all, it's hilarious that you're even asking me that. But
well,
let's go
that
route.
Let's go. It's hilarious that you're bringing that up.
If you're going to ask the question, let me respond.
Okay.
So here's what I would say. Two parts to this. I'm looking at this objectively as there's a PR person involved in $120 million, and this CEO, I got his name, I forget it offhand, but their point and purpose on a launch like this is to get as many eyeballs as you can. So you don't say you don't label yourself as anti-woke, but your PR person is helping these reporters to frame this conversation. It doesn't show up in Yahoo Finance, Reuters, Wall Street Journal with all the same framing unless somebody behind the scenes is helping to frame this narrative, which is also grabbing attention headlines. What I'm trying to say is I agree with you on the premise that the woke part is not really any part of this launch, and that's not their value proposition. There is 0% chance that Citadel and BlackRock are going to come together and compete. Their value proposition for a brand new exchange is anti-woke. That's not enough to be competitive. Second part behind this, my friend,
plus that's not how either of those firms think.
That's where I'm going. Stupid. Let's talk Larry Fink and BlackRock. First of all, the fact that they're doing this in Texas. Let me tell you the irony in all this. The juicy irony in all this is that Texas was at the forefront, and this is according to Reuters and in their article, of politically red or conservative states that restricted their public pension funds from doing business with BlackRock and other Wall Street firms that embraced ESG. Effectively said, your whole woke movement, ESG, we're going to restrict our capital in pension funds from going in this. So the idea that BlackRock themselves, the grandfathers of ESG, all of a sudden they themselves are anti-woke. It's like, give me a break. This is all PR. Now, you put that to the side and you say, what's the value proposition behind this? Or you and I, we can talk about the NASDAQ diversity rule and say whether that's actually a good idea.
The value proposition is easy. Citadel is the largest trading firm in the world. BlackRock is the largest money manager in the world by huge numbers on both sides. Citadel is bigger than any exchange that exists anywhere in the world. They're bigger than any exchange. The value proposition here is we are tired of paying ridiculous amount of fees to the New York Stock Exchange and to the NASDAQ, and we should route this stuff to ourselves. The whole, which I have no issue with, like I said, this benefits our customers, but I hate to give any credit whatsoever to a state with a moron governor and horrible policies that I have zero respect for. So that's why I don't like the term. I mean, the fact that I refuse to acknowledge Greg Abbott as a human, let alone anything else. So let's
go here.
Okay,
let's go here for just a second. Let's talk about the fact that Tesla has moved their headquarters from California to Texas, that they've stopped incorporating in Delaware and are now incorporating in Texas. I'm going to read you a quote. Hold on.
You're talking about somebody who loves Texas. I love Texas.
Of course, you have to love Texas. It's one of the top 5 states for retail traders.
No.
You're
I
effectively shitting
Dallas,
on 15,
Houston.
20%
Hold on.
Customers.
We make an effort every year to go to Dallas, Houston, Austin. We have a huge customer base in Texas. Doesn't mean I have to like their politics or their governor, but they also have great politicians in Texas.
So let's talk about the business environment then. I'm going to read you something. And of course, it's consider the bias, consider the source. This is from the This is the Texas Association of Business, or TAB for short.
I don't know who they are.
I know you wouldn't, and I knew you would make that comment. The CEO, Glenn Hamer, I believe is his name. This is the quote. The point is the quote for you to react on. Texas is already the headquarter of headquarters with 52 Fortune 500 companies, which, by the way, this is an aside, I believe they're tied for second with California with the most Fortune 500 companies. of all states. Anyways, with 52 Fortune 500 companies calling our state home, making us an ideal fit for the nation's newest stock exchange to compete with the current duopoly of NYSE and NASDAQ. CEOs have continually named Texas the best state for business for the last 2 decades, while site selectors have consistently chosen Texas as the top state for new capital investment projects for 12 years and counting. I'm framing this to basically say, either anecdotally or if you look at the data itself, it seems like there have been a lot of defections from places like Illinois, from places like California, and places like Florida and Texas from a business standpoint seem to be growing, whether that's lower income taxes, whether that's more perception of better perceived environments for doing business. And I wonder if you could react to that.
Sure.
That
you're
premise.
forgetting some of the more important things, though, too, like, very inexpensive real estate on a relative basis. Texas is a massive state. And
inexpensive real estate in Austin? Go tell it to people in Austin right now.
But I'm saying in Texas in general, like the reason back in the TD Ameritrade days when they bought us out, the reason they went to Fort Worth, Texas, was for no other reason other than they were able to get, I forgot how many acres it was, but for basically nothing. So
not no other reason. There's a bunch of schools over there with really great talent that come out of there, and they employ a lot of those very smart people.
One of the reasons that Austin, Texas exploded, one of the reasons is because UT is in Austin, and there's other universities as well, but mostly, UT, and yeah, sure, but they build around, that's very common to build around great universities. That's why Chicago is what it is. That's why there are different places all over the country where cities build around the talent source from the universities. No question about that. Listen, Texas is a huge state, and Texas grew the way it did because it had a lot of inexpensive real estate, and it had very that they attracted people. They basically paid a lot of people to come to Texas. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good business. I have no problem with the way Texas does business. But don't isolate, a few cases and say, well, Elon must move there, or, these guys must move there. It bothers me when like an Elon Musk, for example, he made his bones. You got to remember, they made their bones in California. Citadel made his bones in Chicago. What's Ken Griffith without Chicago? Zero. Nothing. That's where he came from. That's where he built everything. Let's be fair. Let's be fair to the places. At some point, these guys go, well, maybe I can build something. Maybe I can get something cheaper, or maybe I'm tired of cold weather, whatever it is. I get that. I have no problem with it. But let's not build it up into something more than it really is. Do you think there's more talent do you think there's more great universities in the middle of Texas than there are in Dallas or something, than there are in Chicago or San Francisco? The answer is not a chance.
Tony, you tell me. My last question will get us all canceled, or do we want to take us out here? I think I'm long on time. You're the captain of the ship.
I would just like to remind everybody what the definition of woke is, and it's just a slang term from the African American community that has become to be something else in this world, and we all just gotta take a step back and maybe educate ourselves a little bit before we get agitated about anything.
I'm not agitated. I just can't stand when people use that term. I just don't like when media
it doesn't
people use
mean
that term.
What you think it means. It's almost
it's just my
it's
point
ignorant
is
in the terms that it's being used.
My point to you is that creating a new exchange makes all the sense in the world. Where they create that exchange makes no freaking difference to me, because where an exchange is headquartered now doesn't make a damn bit of difference. In fact, every exchange eventually they're all going to be decentralized in a couple of years anyway. I don't even care.
Let me ask this question. I know I'm grabbing the cactus here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Tom, what do you think about the diversity rule at the NASDAQ, where you effectively have a requirement of diversity for the board depending on the size of the company? What do you think about an exchange, not just an exchange, but an exchange who effectively has a duopoly of control in a marketplace, determining that in order to list and create capital formation in our marketplace, that you need to have a certain number of diverse board members? What do you think about that?
So you should have thrown the NFL in there as well. Why does the NFL have to interview, candidates, minority candidates for all the head coaching jobs, all of those things? What do I think about that stuff? So it's interesting. So I have actually been on the other side of this discussion, and we have been a public company, and we have been put in a situation where we had to add people to our board that were not qualified because we had to meet certain standards on the NASDAQ. And it really pissed me off. So I do not like the rule where you have to have a certain number of this, a certain number of that, a certain type of diversity. I like the mandate, which basically says that firms should try to, like, I like what the NFL has done, as long as it's not just pure window dressing. I like the idea of, I like to have a requirement in place that you use best efforts to diversify your board. But I do not believe that there should be a requirement or you can't be listed on the exchange. I have been in a situation in the world of fintech where we have been unable to fill certain board roles because of, what we feel are people. We had to fill we had to fill roles with people that we did not feel were qualified. And that is very upsetting to somebody when you're trying to build a business and you need the support of your board and you need the know-how of your board in order to grow that business. So I am not somebody that actually will sit there and say, hey, you know what? We should mandate and we should legislate that boards have to be a certain mix. But I do think that companies and boards need to make a best effort. I'm going to tell you a story that you might not know. But and this is a true story, maybe you know this, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when TD Ameritrade bought Thinkorswim, okay? And Fred was the CEO. Fred and I sat down and he said, Tom, look around this room. What's wrong with this room? And of all their executives. And I said, what? Everybody's a white male at a certain age. And he goes, you're right. Now, Fred, I wouldn't call Fred woke or whatever. I mean, he's a great CEO, but he thinks very progressively. And he said to me, Tom, you got to mix things up. You and the other people here have to mix things up, and you have to find people that can be the future leaders of this firm. First person I brought to Chicago was you.
Yeah, you did tell me that story.
Okay, I brought you to Chicago, first person. Were you qualified at the time? I didn't know. And this was probably 2008 or 9 or something. I don't remember.
2009.
But I'm just saying to you, it's not like, don't look at this as like, these are important things that have to happen for in order for us to progress as a society. And you were the first of many people when we tried to break it up and to go, to add not just diversity, but to add different cultural things, different inputs, things like that. And I just want to stress, like, there is nothing, we didn't mandate it. We just said, hey, we've got to be better than this. We can't Victor, be a room full.
Tom was behind the eight ball, Victor, when he brought you on, because he for years thought I was Indian. He didn't find out I was Italian until many years later. And
not
he's
even
like,
close.
Oh, man,
not even close to true. So don't even go there. But what I'm saying is, yeah, Victor, I think firms need to make a best efforts. And I think the idea that somebody thinks, oh man, well, Texas doesn't have those rules, that's a joke. I can tell you right now that BlackRock, very progressive firm, and Citadel, very progressive firm. So in spite of, some of the political leanings or whatever, they're very progressive firms. That is not the way they thought about this exchange at all. And I am very supportive of this exchange because I want to reduce our fees to the fees that we have to charge customers for different types of accounts and different data and everything else. So yes, of course I'm supportive.
I'll give you real quick my response to that. I think as somebody who once sat on the board of the Greenwood Project, which is an institution that tries to connect minority communities and underprivileged areas in the city of Chicago with positions within finance, I feel strongly that there's opportunity to connect pools of talent that senior leaders don't necessarily have a direct pipeline into, and that there's opportunities there. I do think on the flip side, when you start talking about mandating, that we can make the mistake of thinking that somebody who looks like me thinks like me politically. That
You're
they
right.
come from the hold on, that they come from the same background that I come from, that they have the same desire, but political outcomes, or the same business motivations, the same societal desires as I do. And in my personal opinion, and knowing that the African American community is not a monolith, we do not think all alike. We do not have one. We do not think in one single way when we vote, and all other communities are the exact same. I think we fall into a very slippery slope of believing that, hey, you guys look like each other. You guys think the exact same, and that's not true. And I think that's the slippery slope about these types of mandates. But I also believe that we can do better. I just don't think that if you have a duopoly at the exchange level, you can have one of those exchanges implementing these types of rules. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, I mean that's fair. And if I'd known now what I know, if I'd known then what I know about you now, sure, I never would have brought you over.
Don't do it. I knew you were going to do it. Gentlemen, who knows what's going to happen with this one? If it's our last episode, it's been great, Tony.